but a lot of us have struggled through some type of trauma that's not visible. And so you'll talk to someone and until you get to know them, you don't know what they've been through. I would never
No,
know your story about the
no.
$25.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And Prince George, for those of the people watching us around the world, is about 800 kilometers or 500 miles north of Vancouver. It's a beautiful day. Usually we have lots of snow by now, but not this year so far. I'm not sure if that is good or bad, but in any event, we'll take it. And again, today is a very, very special day. We have a very special guest. Her name is Amber Larkins. And Amber is very, very special. She is a creator and visionary of Behind the Transformation Through Trauma Project podcast, and is very active in podcasting, is an entrepreneur extraordinaire, and has an amazing story. So, Amber, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, John. I'm so happy to be here.
So let us know, and my guests know, where are you located, and then tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I am in Nashville, Tennessee, or right outside of Nashville. And I came out of the fitness industry, if you go back far enough. I was
Right.
competing and doing a lot of stuff with fitness. And I got out of that after I got married and had kids and got into doing photography for fitness. And it's kind of been my journey in life has led me just where it wanted me to be. You know, I started photographing athletes and I would hear stories of transformation and triumph. And that is kind of where it all started as far as the podcast goes, as far as everything I'm doing from storytelling to helping people get their stories out, helping people heal from trauma. We have the Transformation Through Trauma Project, which is photographing trauma. So we got a lot going on.
Yeah. So, how many children do you have, Amber?
Yep, I have two. I have a 12-year-old son and
What's his name?
his
I
name
always
is
like to
Diesel.
introduce. What's his name?
Diesel.
Diesel.
Diesel like diesel fuel. Yep. Yep. And he
Oh,
runs like diesel fuel.
oh my goodness! And then,
And then I have my daughter. She's 9, or she's about to be 9. And her name is Aria.
Arya. Okay, so I always like to share with our guests from around the world, and they like it when they are a little bit part of your podcasting too, at least as you interacting with
Yeah.
me. So that I would think that is important. So 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 a lot of deals with trauma. Either so why is that? So is that because of you're a storyteller and you were exposed to interacting with people, being affected by it, or how did you go in particular focused on those areas?
Yeah, absolutely. I can elaborate on that. So, when I was working with athletes, it's funny because athletes to me have these amazing stories. Not I'm Everyone has a story, so
Yeah.
I don't want to dismiss that fact, but I would hear these stories of people that had used fitness to overcome things from alcoholism to debilitating diseases to horrifying accidents. Like, I would hear these amazing stories, and I don't know if this is a gift or just people feel comfortable around me, but a lot of my clients over the years would open up to me. They would share with me, this is how fitness has served a big purpose in my life. And because of that, I started wondering, like, why do I get to hear all these stories? These are
Right.
so inspiring. People could really benefit from hearing these stories. And I wanted to make a bigger impact. I didn't feel like social media was enough to get these stories heard. And so I started praying about it. And that's kind of how I stumbled into the transformation through trauma. I'm an artist. I love you know, art and just really making people look and feel like almost inspirational in a sense. So what we started doing was photographing the trauma, and then we would photograph the triumph. So we would do like 2 photo shoots, and it would be very conceptual type art. I would listen to their story, and I would photograph them. And sometimes it looked like photographing, scars, or sometimes it looked like photographing emotions, facial expressions, things like that. Sometimes we had themes. Like I shot one girl that had cancer, and she'd overcome cancer, and we did hers like a beauty for ashes theme. So years of just kind of not really promoting this. I did it as a passion project, and I was actually at a retreat and really felt like I got connected with myself. I got connected with God, and I just felt like there was this push to do this podcast. And that started almost a year ago now, and it has been a wild ride,
Yeah.
but a very rewarding one. It's been very rewarding. So that's kind of how I got into trauma. But the funny thing is, I feel like I'm right on track. Like this is my destiny to do this and to help people. I feel like I'm a conduit, is what I tell people. Like people will connect with me, and then I want to connect them with people that are in the midst of trauma. So the guests like yourself that come on my show or come on my podcast, they are people that have overcome trauma. So they are inspirational to my audience who listens to the podcast.
Yeah, so what is interesting, just for the benefit of our guests watching from around the world, is you podcasted me as a guest on your podcast. How long ago was it, Amber? A month ago?
It's been about a little over a month, maybe, and
Yeah.
your episode just released Friday, though. It just recently released, so.
Right. So, so what I find is that, I started podcasting probably a bit before COVID happened, really, on a local basis here. It was really not podcasting, but it was kind of interacting and communicating with a broader group of individuals rather than the ones that close to you. And that were interviews that were then played on one of the local television station. Then what happened is COVID happened, and so that could not go on because they had a studio and we could not go there anymore. And so then I had this apartment where we are sitting now, downtown Prince George, and we said, well, let's turn this into a studio, and then we'll start podcasting directly. So we did that first in the region, in the community, and obviously we are not Nashville, Tennessee. We have about 80 to 100,000 people directly in the area. In northern BC, although it's a very, very big area, there's probably a couple 100,000 people, not very many compared to your area, but we still have amazing individuals. And so I started podcasting those initially in this setting. And that was officially podcasting, my first exposure to it. And then we started teaming up with Podmatch, and about 6-8 months ago or something like that. And so today I think you are 197, I think. So I've been down close to, I do about 12 to 15 podcasts a month, where I'm the podcaster, and then I'm also the guest on other podcasts, probably 5 or 6 a month. So I've been very, very active, and what I like about it is the same as you do. I'm a storyteller, for one. I've been exposed to, as you already know, trauma of all kinds of different sorts, and difficult times, and I always like to share the challenges, and then especially share that with people that are struggling and have challenges. And so what I did is about 5 years ago, I started to write a book, and I think I sent it to you. I don't know if you
Yes,
got it or not. Against All
I
Odds.
did.
Yeah,
Yes.
and Against All Odds is not about hurrah, hurrah, John, how successful he is, but in spite of it all, and I had never written a book in my life, and and then an autobiography, you cannot write one and then say, not good enough, I'll do another one. No, you only got one crack at it, autobiography. And so it took me 80 years to live it. I'm 83 now. And then it took me 20 years to think about it, starting, stopping, starting, stopping, starting, stopping. And then I knew 5 years ago, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So I did it then. It took me 2 years to do it. Got a good team around me, and I think it's a good book, But the whole point of it was not so much to make a lot of money on selling books. That was not the point of it. It allows me to share my challenges with others and saying, virtually, if I can do it, anybody can do it, So, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of the challenges along the way. But I'm relatively new to Canada. I came here in 1965 with no money, $25.47, and then started from the bottom up, but always knew that I could do it inside of me. And although I had felt that I was a bit of a failure and other people were doing better than I could, I was not very successful in school, failed grade 3, failed grade 7 3 times, became a laborer. I'm proud of that now. But, but always having that confidence that I can do it. And then I came to Prince George here in 1965. I had $25.47 in my pocket, but what I had a lot of is attitude. I'm always positive. No matter what happens, I'll challenge that the day is, I will swear it's a better day tomorrow. Then I have passion, all the things that I do, I give it all that I got. And then work ethic, I work harder than anybody. And what follows them is success. And I like to share that with other people as well, is that, we are so fortunate and living where we are living, especially when we look around the world and all the challenges in Europe, obviously the Ukraine and the Middle East. And then I look at North America, Canada, United States, really, and I fly around a lot for my businesses, and I sit always by the window in the airplane, and I look outside, it says, it's paradise. So how lucky we are. And then the other thing always to remember, how quickly it can all change.
That is so true. And that story is so inspiring to me. Like when you told a little bit of that on the podcast with me, and that's a very inspiring story. And you're exactly the kind of person that, could offer a ton of resources to someone who is struggling through thinking they're not enough. And then you step up and say, this is the money that I had, this is the experience I had, and it shows people that you truly are enough. And one of the things I'll tell you that I really loved about your story, it was like one thing that you spoke about on my podcast, but I clung to that because I thought it was so powerful, is this idea that the ADHD was something that was almost like a superpower. It
No
shows the
question.
perception. Yeah, it shows the perception of things. Like we have that power to choose if we want to believe that this is a debilitating thing, or maybe this is a superpower, or how can we use it to our advantage. So I love everything about your story.
So the key with ADHD to me was, but I appreciate very much you mentioning it, is that I felt, after failing grade 3 and grade 7 3 times, that I had failed. Although I was a happy-go-lucky guy, but deep inside I felt I had failed. And then the other part that I told you is that I was born in 1940 in northeastern Holland, and we were invaded by the German armies who controlled Holland for 5 years, and things were pretty rough for our family, and and for all the families down there. My dad was drafted into the Dutch army, and the last time they heard from him, he was caught in Rotterdam when it was bombed. And and obviously we saw there was no food, there was no fuel, and we as kids would go into, and me at 4 or 5, and my sister 1 year older, my brother 2 years older. Every morning we would go in with gunny sacks in the railroad yards and pick up anything edible and burnable. And then the reason that we did is because the Germans wouldn't shoot us, and they put us one, and the following day we'd be back. But I still remember today the feeling of hunger and the feeling of cold, and then my mom on her own trying to raise the kids, and then I remember bombers overhead, hundreds of them, and then at the liberation, April the 12th, 1945, when the Canadians came in, seeing far too much that we should not have seen, and it made such an impression on me that I always knew I would go to Canada, the land of my heroes. But so what affected me by this PTSD stayed with me, and then the inner child, the fear of losing that one parent, that the only one that we had, and and then the dream of going to Canada, and then feeling that I had failed in Holland, that I was going to prove to me, only me, that I could do it on my own, and that I was just as good as the other people. And so then when I came here, I wanted to start with nothing, for virtually nothing. And then very quickly, I had to learn to speak the language, so I grew up in northeastern Holland. We speak a dialect. Even the people in Holland don't understand us. And usually that part of Holland, they refer to it as all the farmers come from there. and so that already make us feel like not all that good. And then the other part, to speak High Dutch, was difficult, but I loved speaking dialect. So I had to barely acquire this ability to speak High Dutch then when I left for Canada, and now I had to learn to speak English, because failing grade 3 and grade 7, they didn't teach us English then, and so you knew yes and no, and then but it didn't take me long to kind of catch on to it, and became a cleanup man here, Lumbapala, and very quickly I rose up. And but it's not about me how successful I am. Obviously I've done well, and because it's the land of the opportunity. But the point that I was going to make, that is so important, and you raised it, is that even then, already being successful, and then people would say to me, "You're so successful, you got all these businesses and blah, blah, blah." I didn't feel that way. I felt still, even then, that I had been a failure. And it took me 32 years. I came here in 1965. It took me until January of 1997, 32 years later, that I walked into a store here in town, and I still don't know why, I picked up this book, Driven to Distraction, and I opened the book, and it was about ADHD, and I'd never even heard about it. And the more I read about it, the more I said, "Oh my God, that's me." And so I wrote in the book in Dutch, because I was ashamed of it. Now I finally know who I am. And, so, and so then quite a number of years later, and I send you one of those too, I felt I had to write a book about it, because I felt there was so much stigma attached to it. And by the time I found out, at least looking at Google and all the other things, I felt confident that it is an asset, and it took me 5 years before I went to my doctor, our doctor, family doctor, that delivered our 2 girls, and then at the same time was a friend, and I walked into his office and he said, "Hey John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And so we looked at it, and yeah, I do. So then I was 62 years old, And and then the more I found out about it, the more I believed that it is a superpower, and it allowed me to do a lot of things. It changed my life. So going through the war, being liberated by the Canadian Army, and that became my dream to go here. My grandfather was a master carpenter. My dad worked in lumber. Then the dream was to build my own lumber mill, start from nothing, and I did that. And then finding that all those years that I had felt I had failed, ADHD became the answer behind it. And I always felt that I had an obligation to be more vocal about it, because it was then thought that maybe 8% of the population had ADHD. I believe now, and a lot of other people do too, is well over 20%. And then the other part that I found is that I had to write a book about it. So I wrote a book about it, ADHD Unlocked, and it's written by the ADHD mind. You can start it anywhere, go either forward, backward, that kind of a book. Very popular, actually. Now, the other thing that you may find interesting about all my books, I have another one here as well. I'll show you. I send it to you as well. If you could see the back of the book, the prices on my book are all the same, $25.47. Like this one.
Right.
So still
That's
now,
awesome.
I feel I have an obligation to share my experience about ADHD, but also about, reconciling with yourself that you're okay. You are, to reconcile that you just, I see so many people, they say, this is not good about me and this is not good. Every individual is unique in this world and special. And I believe it is very, very important to understand that, and and it gives people then, and young people in particular, but also others, that we meet, you and I do on a frequent basis, that even they don't feel good about who they are, what they are. They are unique. You don't have to be entrepreneurs. You don't have to be, but whatever you do, give it all that you got. Have the right attitude first and foremost. Have passion with all the things that you do. And if you don't like what you're doing, and so many people are that don't like what they are doing, or they don't like their jobs, or the young people in particular that I talk to, I asked them, I said, what you going to do for a career? And they say, well, I don't know. I said, well, check it out, check with some people that have jobs and find out what they do, and they'll all gladly talk to you about what they're doing. Entrepreneurship, want to know about that. Everybody doesn't have to be an entrepreneur, but if you like to be a baker, or you like to be an auto mechanic, or whatever, find out about it. Right. Everybody likes to tell you what they do. Yeah. So I felt I had to write a book about that. So I wrote the book, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream, and $25.47. No, I'm just joking, but so the same price. But the point is that it hopefully helps some to kind of find the direction. I heard something on, I think it was CNN or one of the other U.S. television stations. They said that a couple of weeks ago that 70% of the people that work don't like the jobs. I said, well, that's scary. And 75% of the 70% are looking for another job. I said, my goodness, because if you don't like what you're doing, you're going to take it home with you, and it affects all the people around you, and at least find something where you can find that passion and that you can feel good about it, so.
Yeah. I totally agree with you on that. I think, we're given the power of choice, which is a very powerful thing, that we can decide what we want to do. It's up to us to find that passion, though. It's up to us to figure out what it is that drives us and moves us and makes us want to, wake up in the morning with enthusiasm.
And for those that are seeking for it, I usually say that to young people is feel free to call people that have a career of some sort. It may be a lawyer, a doctor, a nurse, an entrepreneur, or whatever they do. If you call somebody like that for having a coffee maybe and exploring what these jobs are and what are the pluses and the minuses, so that it helps you in making those selections. Other ones there are people that are consultants that do it for a fee for service, but there's lots of free information around that you can become informed, to take the right direction.
Totally
Yeah.
agree. And I like to tell people it's like the thing that you do really well and the thing that you would do if no one was watching, like you would just do it in your free time for fun. Like explore where those two things intersect.
Right. Yeah. And so for you, like photographic became also likely a hobby that turned into a career. I saw some of the pictures that I was checking on Facebook that you have there. They're very well done. Obviously, you have
Thank you.
a strong talent there. And the other thing, then, what you said on one of the documents that I saw is, my vision for this project includes, in talking about the project that we just talked about, includes 3 core principles. What are the core principles?
I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Was that on a post or that was something?
Yeah, it was on this one here. Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that post.
Okay.
I post a lot of things. But are we talking about purpose specifically?
Yeah. Yeah, the one that
Yeah.
you said
I
that.
think-
Yeah, sorry.
I think that one is that the one that where I was talking about the intersection of the finding your purpose and what that looks like, what you're good at, what you do in your free time.
Yeah, what you said here, Amber, is that healing for those who have experience in trauma through powerful sharing and storytelling, a pace to transcend darkness surrounded by trauma and experience. So. Yeah.
Okay, yes. So that is specifically talking about not necessarily purpose. I'm sorry, I got a little confused. That's
Right.
specifically talking about trauma. And
Right.
that picture that you showed, she was one of my transformation through trauma sessions. We photographed her, her story. She had I can't remember what it's called now, but it was a scar from her sternum down all the way down past her belly button, and
Wow.
she was always felt like she wasn't enough to to have this.
A wound or
It was
operation?
I think it was a perforated bowel or something to do with her
Right.
intestines,
Okay.
and and it created a really bad scar. And she had gone through a divorce, and which divorce can really take a toll, especially on a woman, of feeling like you're not enough. And we worked with her and got some really, really beautiful images. Hers was more conceptual. Her pictures, that picture you see is not, but we did a lot of conceptual stuff like broken mirrors and
Right.
some different things. And then we actually photographed her scar too. If you go on my Instagram, you can see it.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I find I find amazing in the sense that I podcasted a fella here a couple of days ago, and Scott will let me know what it was. Was it 191, Scott, or? Yeah, 191. If you have an opportunity, and his name was. No, I'm talking about a fella lost his arm.
Oh, Randy.
Randy.
Backus.
What was this? The podcast?
192.
192. So.
What was his name?
Randy. Mike.
Backus.
Mattis.
Backus.
Macus, yeah.
Oh, okay.
192 is our podcast. If you go, so he's from the area here, And so what happened with him is that at about 32 years old, he found that at one point his arm, all of a sudden he lost control of his arm. It was the left hand, actually. And so they had to do something to keep him working. And then when they investigated, they found a tumor in his bicep here, the size of a dime, which forced them into having to remove his arm, but not only his arm, also his shoulder, right from here. And
Wow.
he was still very conscientious about it all along. And, and it's an amazing individual. Now, the interesting part about that podcast is that he is competing for the World Championship golfing, one-arm golf, and has been extremely successful in the United States doing one-arm golfing.
So impressive.
And he talked about also not being good enough, and that had, really been part of his life. And then, and then getting involved with the One-Arm Golfing Association in North America as well as in Europe. All of a sudden, the focus is no longer with him, because that is, if you take not only your arm but also your shoulder, then it draws attention. And if he is with other people that have other issues, not maybe the same but similar too, then it gave him again the confidence, and then he became a very, very strong golfer. It's an amazing podcast. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would say so.
Amazing individual.
There's something that you just said that's so powerful, and I tell people this all the time, especially when it comes to storytelling, is that we have to share. We don't have to share, but we should share our stories, because it's in sharing that we become aligned. We meet other people. If he has something that is visible, but a lot of us have struggled through some type of trauma that's not visible. And so you'll talk to someone and until you get to know them, you don't know what they've been through. I would never know your story about the $25. Was it 25 or 26? $26.
25.47.
25.47.
Not
so I would never know that
not
story.
46.47. No, I'm just joking.
But that's a powerful story for someone like myself who's not experienced that, to then be inspired by you. But it's also a powerful story for those who maybe that's all they have, or they only have a handful of money right now, and they're, well, look at this guy, or those that have ADHD that would never know that about you. It's so powerful when we start to open our mouths and share with others.
And
it helps align us with them.
Exactly. And I find it on a daily basis virtually, Amber, is where, like even this morning, I got to know about a 15-year-old young fella that was just diagnosed with ADHD and was troubled by it. And I signed a book for him, actually, to give him the book, and next week I'll be meeting with him. But I hear that all the time. I did in podcast, I get so excited about this, just today, and that was 196, I think. And, the person the lady that I was podcasting, and also an amazing individual, is that 3/4 to the podcast, she said, ADHD. And that happens virtually every single day. But I find about podcasting is that, so just to go a little bit back then, is that, so we started podcasting here in this circle, and then although we have a lot of people here that were very, very interesting and very, very good, amazing amount, and then from there and then I said to my team, I may have to set up a new studio in Vancouver, and because I'm running out of individuals and here, and so then we said, how about virtual? Well, virtual came a long way, because if I look now at televisions, I watch a lot of CNN and those kind of programs, and then you have sometimes up to 3 people on, and they look like they're all the same. At one point, it used to be that there's all kinds of hiccups that happen, but not anymore now. It's just like you and me are sitting here. You could be sitting right next to me on the couch here and interacting,
Yeah.
and that's amazing. And then the other part about it is that maybe after COVID, but even before that, is that I did a lot of public speaking, and where I go halfway across the country to speak to 200, 300, 400, 500, whatever it is, people, and that has changed because of podcasting, because all of a sudden you and me are sitting here interacting for an hour, but it's not just you and me. Probably tens of thousands of people are watching our podcast. I know that, around the world. And that's the difference now in terms of, and that's why it is so important, like what you and me are doing, exchanging our lives and our life stories and our experiences that we can share with all those other people. And I think certainly it's the vehicle that will become increased. It's still at the very early stages, actually. Like even looking at podcasting, I podcasted their CEO, Alex. I think he was 190 or so, and so that was kind of interesting. And but it is still very much at the beginning, and we have podcasted people from Central Europe, from Spain, from South America, the United States, obviously, and but it is amazing how big the circle is, how many people are watching.
Yeah, and it's easier, I think, too. Like, I got into podcasting, and I was just telling someone this the other day. When you first start, it takes time to build momentum for people to see what you're doing and to really build an audience. And I think a lot of people go into something like this and they're like, I want a big audience. I didn't. I said,
No.
I know I need to improve on my speaking skills. I know I need to improve on my interviewing skills, my listening skills. There's so many skills that podcasting really helps you kind of tailor fit. That to me, it's like, I didn't want a huge audience at first, because that is intimidating when you start to think you have this many people listening. But it's also easy too, because you're not thinking that, versus speaking on a stage. You're seeing interactions, you're seeing the facial expressions of people, which can be distracting. So I think a platform like this is amazing because it allows people to share their hearts without feeling a lot of that intimidation.
Exactly, and at the same time, it's understandable, knowing that there potentially are a lot of people watching, that it would make somebody a little bit nervous, maybe. But the best is to be you, and so what I usually do is, some people want to do pre-interviews and all that sort of things. We don't do that really all that much. I do if I'm a guest at somebody's podcast, but if that's what they want. But normally with mine, I like the idea of just looking at somebody's bio, and then at the same time, I'm a storyteller, and I like interacting with people like we just met. We are friends, and we are exchanging our stories, and it then becomes very candid and very easy to listen to. And this morning I was on a conference call for my lumbar operations, and So before I got started on the conference call about lumber and other things, the guy said to me, "Oh, I should tell you, this morning when I drove to work, I listened to one of your podcasts, the one with the this, that, and the other thing." And I said, "Oh, good." So can you believe it? And that happens, more and more. And but it's still at its infancy, really. But it is the media that goes much broader, much further, and I think it will become much bigger and bigger all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it'll just help people be even more interconnected, which is a struggle with the digital world. But I think that people crave authenticity, and I believe podcast has the ability to give us that.
Exactly. So what you're doing now is being interactive a lot with people. You still photographing. You were quite involved in a number of other things as well. Entrepreneurship. You wrote a book, and
I have not. No, I have not written a book yet. I have been working on a compilation book. It's like a photo book of
Okay.
the transformation through trauma stories that we photographed.
Right.
So my vision for this book would be like a coffee table book that kind of gives excerpts of stories that
Right.
these people have overcome, the trauma that they've overcome, and then the conceptual art of their photograph. I am still working on that project, but that's finding the right people to be in a book like that is a little more challenging than what I had originally thought.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot about writing a book, and I would love, that's still on my agenda.
Yeah, but at least you have it now in your mind, and the material for it is available to you. And and I went through this, with Against All Odds, and that's why I said it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it. Start, stop, start. Writing books is not easy. And but once you get the feel of it, then it's a lot of fun. And and amazingly, even with my background, I'm a good writer, and which is somewhat amazing, So, and then the other book that I'm working on that comes out next July, is Living Young, Dying Old, and the whole point there is that it's not so much age, but it's quality of life that counts.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part,
Yeah.
you alluded to that as well, is that I still go to the gym, and the reason I'm probably one of your classic examples that I went to the gym, I had to get a scare. I did. I had a case of diverticulitis that nearly killed me in 2008. And up to then, I was the kind of individual that New Year's Eve comes and I'm going to do this, that's a commitment, and it always included going to the gym. And then I buy the membership the first week in January, and then the second week of January I can find 100 reasons why I can't go. And then until the next year. So, but then I knew in earnest I better do something about it, and on diet for one, and then secondly, to get a trainer, and I started working with a trainer, and did that for about 6-7 years, and then one day somebody said, "Hey John, have you ever thought about competing?" Said, "Me? Really?" And then the more I thought about it, yeah, because I usually take things very serious, and I really give it all that I got, and I started to look like presentable, and so I started training, and then competing, bit intimidating actually, but competing in your little Speedo, standing in front of all the people in your town that you know. So
Yeah.
But anyway, I got past that, and then came in second bodybuilding, third in physique. They qualified me for the provincials, and came third in physique, second in bodybuilding, and qualified me for the nationals and the Arnolds. And then,
See, see, that's a thing that I would never know unless you just told me. But that's where I started photographing people, was getting ready for competitions and getting into competitions, and then I started working with influencers and so on and so forth. But it was there in the bodybuilding. That's where it all started for me in fitness. So it's
yeah.
so interesting that we connect on that.
So, and now what I'm doing is that, again, like this morning, my legs, I can barely walk because I had a leg day today. So I'm training again, for bodybuilding physique competition next year. Then I'm already 83, so it makes me, I think, the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And I again want to compete locally, regionally. There's not many left in my category that's 55 years and older. Most of the ones that I competed with the last go around when I qualified for the Nationals and the Arnolds, they could be my kids or my sons. And, so I will compete again, start competing again sometimes later this spring of next year, 24. And then I already talked to Arnold that he already told me him and me will work out together and take pictures together. And I said, that's, hey, first class. And so I'm going to do it again. So now I have gone through, so you can relate to it, the taking photographs, is all part of it, and posing and, and it was all new to me. We had, when we did it here locally, and it started with, you getting tanned, getting ready for it, tanning, and that was a new experience to me. So, and then being in your little Speedos, and then you get the tanning done. It was a number of ladies that do the tanning, hundreds of people. And then they said, did you bring your sock? How do you mean sock? I have 2 socks. So, so the reason for the sock is that you have to be pretty much naked and getting tanned, and then so, but that was a new experience for me, and saying, bring your sock, so anyway, but then after that, then it's an art, once I got done here and qualified and then started competing provincially. Here, there were probably 200, 250. Every single one of them belonged there. No question about it. That, and that put an immense amount of effort in to become an athlete in that field. And, and then even more so on the national and the Arnolds, obviously. But it's an amazing sport. But what you were saying is that I remember from way back when I first would go to the gym, I'd see all these people walking around. They go like this, and there am I walking around. I don't even know how to sit on a machine. And I always kind of feel like you're saying, why is he here? You should be, and being so self-confident. And that's not so, because most people now, at least, maybe 20, 30 years ago was different, but now at least most people that are there want to be supportive. And then again, coming back to my book, Living Young, Dying Old, is saying that you don't have to become a bodybuilder and an Olympian, but at least try to get at least 20 minutes to a half an hour walking, even exercise on a daily basis. Be careful about your diets. I read a book, and I forget the title of the book now, but it just came out recently, and the book started with that, written by a doc that had done or was involved in 100 biopsies of people that passed away. None of them died of old age. That's food for thought, and especially those areas is the whole new approach to the medical approach, and getting away from the getting medicine for every ill that you have, rather than looking carefully at diet and lifestyle and and those kind of things, that are critically important. So that's kind of what the book is about. That living young, dying old.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've had guests on my podcast that have come on and talked about the power of nutrition and the power of holistically healing. But I want to bring something up. It's so funny because you talked about the bodybuilding and weightlifting, and one thing kept resounding in my mind of, you are never too old to start something new. And bodybuilding is not, it's a sport that is not, it's not easy. It's not easy to
No,
do.
no.
And for someone, like yourself to just decide you're going to do this and you go in and do it and now you're doing it again, it's very impressive. So it doesn't surprise me at all coming from you because of what I know about you. I think that you're very im- im- inspirational human, and you push the boundaries, and I think that's awesome. So I just wanted you to know I recognize that, and it's very inspiring to myself to hear you tell
Yeah.
that story.
Well, thank you, Amber. And at the same time, I feel because of the background. So the other thing that I do is that every year, and I've done it for the last 12 years, is that I speak to some of the schools here the week on the Rememberings Day, is to why the 2 minutes of silence, and that has always been important to me, and I believe it is important since I was there and still remember parts of it. To think about that as to how lucky we are and how quickly it can change. So and every year, I've been doing it for about 12 years. I try to do 2 schools in northern BC and then maybe 2 schools down in the lower mainland, and always very, very rewarding. And but again, something that I believe that of the experience, the same as you are doing, is that I've had all this experience. I feel I have an obligation to talk about it in terms of, in particular, considering how we should appreciate to what we have and how quickly it can all change. And then the other part is giving back to your community. And that to me has always been important. And I grew up in that, in Holland. That was part of what we did. And I've always done it here. And, and even when I didn't have much money, but at least be part of the community, give back where you can, and and it's an obligation and extremely rewarding.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. You're an amazing human, and I'm privileged that we got a chance to meet there on Podmatch. I know that uh, Podmatch is it's been a great thing for me. I have got to meet so many people, and
Yeah,
interesting people that have amazing stories, and it's just a great platform to be on. And we would have never met had we not
e-
been on that platform.
exactly. And I found it interesting. And if you have an opportunity to listen to our podcast with Alex, the fellow that was the founder of podcast, he is an amazing individual telling the story, how it all started and how it all happened. And it shows entrepreneurship, and his background is very, very interesting as well. But still all relatively new, Amber, is that all of this is just all happening, and I believe it's going to get much bigger and much broader, where we're talking to even now already to people from all across the world and that are listening to us and are being inspired by what we have to say, or at least find it to be very, very interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And it gives me a lot of hope going into podcasting and doing something. It gives you a platform to let your voice be heard and let others bring their voice to be heard. Messages that need to be out into the world.
Exactly. So as you go forward now, as we towards the end of our podcast here, is that so you have pretty well laid out the direction that you want to go going forward, and obviously podcasting is one of those avenues. Getting ready for a book, and then keep following, the issues around trauma and those kind of areas, right? And
Yeah.
photographing.
Yes, and photographing is definitely it's a hobby, and I've always said photo- photography is a vehicle to get me to where I really want to be in life. And I feel like podcasting is a part of that, but I love entrepreneurship, and with my business, we've been kind of actively transitioning out of just photography into more like content, building content. But my heart is really helping businesses that have purpose. So, purpose driven content for purpose driven businesses. And that's really on the flip side of everything. That's kind of like what I do. And then the podcasting is like my passion project. That's my baby.
Yeah, I love it too. Yeah.
hmm
Amber, it was delightful again to meet you and talk to you again. And thank you for being on my podcast. I think
Well,
you're
thank you.
an amazing individual, and I wish you all the best. And let's stay in touch.
Thank you so much. Yes, yes, for sure. Thank you so much for everything and for having me on and just for chatting. It's so awesome to just be able to have these kind of authentic conversations. So I appreciate it so much.
Thank you very much. Take care, Amber. Have a
Thank you.
great Christmas and holiday season.
And you
And-
do the
and-
same.
and a very, very good 2024. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. You do the same.
Okay. Thanks, Amber. Take care.